Welcome to El Podcast de Letty Maycotte, the first guest of our second season. I'm so happy to have you here. This is Giulia Rustichini.
Hi!
Hi, Giulia. For those who doesn't know, Giulia, she's an animator. I met her at Vancouver. And I would love if you introduce yourself, Giulia, just to know more about you and your work. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, hi, my name is Giulia and I'm Italian. I come from Italy. I started working in Vancouver mostly, but I was studying in Chandler is making a mess. I was studying in New York first, and I studied a bit in Vancouver, and then I worked in Vancouver for Sony Animation, for DHX, for MPC, and yeah, I got some experience in New York, but it was mostly internships, and so I don't consider really like a work, but it was fun. Yeah, and they were for a small show, for kids show for Nickelodeon, and it was cute and fun. Yeah.
Nice. So are you an animator, a 3D animator, and also a 2D animator? Or do you consider yourself more like a 3D animator?
Let's say I'm a 3D animator now, because 2D animator consists mostly of knowing programs like Harmony and Flash, which I don't feel very comfortable with. But I started as a traditional 2D animator, so I really like to draw. And I keep drawing on my free time, mostly character design. But as far as animation, I think I can animate in original 2D, but I don't do it as often as before. I mostly animate in 3D now. Oh, you're back. Hi.
That's Chandler. Chandler is
yes.
Super.
You're going to be famous. Are you happy? Are you happy? Yes. Exactly.
This meme, and that's Chandler. So I said, Giulia, hey, just invite Chandler to come to the podcast, because I think it's like cute and funny, and I don't know, if something goes wrong, people they're gonna just want to watch the podcast just because Chandler is me. So, Giulia, what did you study?
I studied 2D animation, like I did 2 years on paper animation, and the other 2 years I used mostly the tablet, and I used TV Paint as a program for doing animation. TV Paint, it's a French animation program.
Okay.
But the course was not just animation, it covered also like some character design and storyboard. It was mostly like not just animating, more like the different parts of the animation industry, like, and the courses about it. And so it was a bit spread out. And when I went to Vancouver, I decided to just do 3D animation, and the classes were just mostly about animation and a bit of modeling, but mostly animation and animation techniques and everything.
Did you study it in a school, like in a physical school, or did you study it online?
No, it was a physical school, both in New York and in Vancouver. Vancouver was 1 year, but then I also took an online school only for 3 months, but it was very helpful. It was Anim Squad, and I took that class. It was intermediate class after the Vancouver school, and it helped me a lot to get the first job in Sony, actually, because I only did one exercise, because it took a while to refine it during the class. It was 3 months, but yeah, I got a call from Sony after I applied online, and they mentioned that animation. So I think it helped for the job there. It was a very snappy animation shot. It was, to be honest, when I look at it right now, I know it could have been done much better and be more clear, but I think they like the snappiness, so that's why, yes. So that's why they call me. And yeah, that's it. You're so
Chandler is like, yes, they like the snappy animation there.
Did you understand?
I'm curious about all the animation process. How do you? What's the workflow for an animator? Let's say that you just get a shot, like an assignation of the shot. What do you do? What's the first step, and then what's other steps to work a shot?
When you get a shot, assuming you know the character very well and you know what has to be done, you usually get, when I was in Sony specifically, or also in my recent job in Montreal, you get a lounge. So the director, the supervisor, tells you what kind of performance they want to see or how the character is feeling through this action. Because if you just have the storyboard, they might be a bit too simple to read, and you want to get more details about the shot and how the character is feeling. And after that, it's mostly about I start with a traditional approach, so I usually draw thumbnails for myself because I like to start in 2D first instead of 3D. But I just draw them on paper. I don't do any 2D tests or any, like, I just draw. And I draw the main poses or the main keys of the actions, so the story keys. So depending what the character is doing, there are the beats that are important to tell the story. And after I do that, I show them to my lead or to the supervisor, and if they like the idea, then I go and I pose them in 3D. So I use the same drawing in 2D, but I use them as a guide to pose the character in 3D. And after that is done, I put some breakdowns and I show it again. Usually it's about like, okay, you just do a pass and you show it to your lead. If the lead approves it, then it can be shown to the supervisor in dailies.
What happened?
He's coming back. He came back from below the table. So yeah, once the shot gets approved by the supervisor, I can continue and do the next pass. So you don't wanna jump into doing too much. You just take one step at a time. You show to your lead and supervisor, okay, then you do the next pass. And it's usually from blocking the keys, then breakdowns, then in-betweens, then polish. The polish is where you take care of like the very fine details of a shot and the movement.
I always see all your comics, like your little stories. Your little stories about Chandler or your life, like you're always posting drawings and that, and I really like how you draw and how you express the emotion and the action in just one pose of the character. And wonder if an animator has to know how to draw, or if that's not necessary, or if it's like a good tool for them to know how to draw and how to transmit with a drawing.
It really depends on the type of animation, but usually I don't think the animator needs to be good at drawing that much for most of the animation style that are out there. But if you practice drawing, it really helps to develop ideas for more interesting poses or for more interesting and pushed key poses, exactly. So for my last projects, I was at Mikros for SpongeBob, and we were working a lot on the key poses, on the key moments, because it was a very cartoony 2D style show. And they were very pushed, they were very exaggerated. And I noticed that knowing a bit more the 2D animation and how to draw, it kind of helped me to get some poses like done more easily. And other people, they knew how to do it, but sometimes some people had to be reminded how to exaggerate more, or how to like get a more extreme effect. Because when you come from 2D, I don't know, it's just like you're very used to design laws, design of curves, straight curves, and how a drawing has to impact the viewer. So in a sense, it kind of helps a lot to make a good pose. That doesn't mean that it helps you in doing the breakdowns, doing the in-betweens, and doing the polish pass. It's mostly helpful for the beginning part. It's helpful to create a good story pose, a good expression. I really like the beginning part mostly. That's why.
I'm not like a master of drawing, but I like to draw, and always if I want to do some clothes movement or hair movement, I like to draw it and to see it and imagine like the motion. So that's easier for me just to translate it to the 3D. So yeah, that's why I had that wonder. And also, I would like to ask you about your story. How did you move from Italy to the States and then to Canada? And so how was all that process?
It's the process. Well, it was a very long process, but I'm here now and I'm pretty happy right now. After high school, I tried to study animation in Italy, and it was not really, I was not very satisfied over there. So I was studying, but I was trying to go abroad and go somewhere outside of Italy. And yes, we know. And we knew this family and this teacher in New York that was, and still is, teaching in the School of Visual Arts for the film department. So she told me a bit about the school, about the animation department, and I met other people there before actually going there. So I decided to apply, and I actually applied to just that school. I found out later that in US you want to apply to many colleges just to be sure you get accepted somewhere, but I only applied to that. Maybe I was a bit naive, but I just had no other knowledge of other places to apply, and I was happy that I knew somebody there already. And because I was 19 and I didn't want to just go somewhere alone, too alone. It takes a while to hear back because you apply in December of the year for the September of the following year. So I got my response in May, and it was an acceptance response. It was a good response, so I was very happy, and I went there. And I think going to New York was very good for me, mostly for my own personal life, because it helped me grow a lot. And for the artistic life, I think it was very good for the 2D part, because it put me in front of very different talented people that had different styles, and it helped me develop this enjoyment for drawing and 2D, and more like the design style, the style, all my personal, more like developing a personal style in 2D and in drawing, and I really like that. And at the same time, I realized at the end that it was very hard to work in 2D for 2D animation, keeping what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to animate, but not give up all the details of animation, all the basically all the principles of animation that get a bit lost when you switch to programs like Flash or when you switch to Harmony. So I just didn't feel comfortable with those programs, and because of that, I first tried to stay in New York, just trying to animate in 2D, original 2D, but it didn't work. And then that's why I switched to a 3D program, and I decided to go to Vancouver. It was a decision made after a while, because originally I tried to go back to Europe and study in France, but it didn't work out. And then I moved to Vancouver and I studied this 1 year for 3D animation. And I think what I really liked about this part in Vancouver is mostly like understanding more the animation part and the animation, how to actually do animation. Because in New York, I was very concentrated on drawing and like more like design, more style, more like the aesthetic part of animation, but not actually. I was not always concentrated on the principles, so my animation was not as good back then. But because in 3D helps you understand animation much better, because you don't have to think about perspective, because when you draw you have to think about perspective, you have to think about keeping the volumes consistent, you have to think about keeping the character on model. But when you switch to 3D, your character is in 3D space, so you don't have to mind all those things. You just have to work on good poses, good timing, spacing, like basically all the principles of animation. So what I liked is that I could concentrate on that only and understand more what animation is. And so I like both parts of my journey, but for different aspects in terms of learning. And now I'm just new to Montreal, so I don't I don't have I don't know, a review for Montreal yet, but sometime maybe. Yes.
I was to ask you, like, and what do you like better, Vancouver or Montreal? And then you said that, and I was like, okay. Maybe she doesn't know. Well, what do you like better?
I can tell you. I thought you wanted to know about my artistic experience here, but so far I like Montreal more, but not just for the artistic experience. Actually, like, I like it more because of the city itself. Yeah. Because I'm very new to the studio, so I can't really compare Vancouver studios to here. Because I really like working in Sony, and I really like working here in Mikros too. Like for the environment mostly, and the project was fun. But as far as the contest, I think I really like Montreal more, because it has a city vibe and it's a bigger city, and it fits more my character. It's closer to New York than Vancouver, and I'm more like that type of person that enjoys walking around in a big city, and I like art museums, and I like to have a city vibe and a nightlife and everything. And Vancouver it's a pretty city, but it's more for people who really like the outdoors and people who like sports and the mountains, and I feel like after a while it doesn't fit me that much.
And what about the cold weather there in Montreal?
I experienced my first winter this year, and they told me it was not the coldest that has been usually. So for me, to be honest, it was not as crazy as I thought, but they said it was actually not that bad. So I'm like, okay. But the thing that I didn't like is that it really stays cold for a long time. Like, it started to snow in the beginning of November, and now we are in May, and in April it was still snowing sometimes, like very lightly, but still snowing, and it was cold. But yeah, it's a long time. It's been a long time, and the summer is very hot. Actually, it's on the opposite side, so it can get up to 35, 38 degrees, maybe 40 has felt temperature. So it has very opposite, very cold and very hot weather. And what I didn't like is just that it lasts a long time, the winter. But for now it was okay. I actually like more than the rainy days in Vancouver, because Vancouver is super rainy, and it just, after a while, having so much rain, it puts me on a depressing mode, and I cannot deal with it. Yeah. I prefer, I just prefer having a sunny day, a very cold sunny day, than a rainy day every day. Yeah.
So it's not a gray day. Is it sunny but cold weather, or how does the sky looks?
Yeah, it can be gray, but there can be gray days and cold days, but usually, for what I've seen, at least this winter, there were many sunny days. Compared to Vancouver, at least, way many more sunny days. Because the more it's sunny, usually the more it's cold. If it's gray, if it's like, it means it's gonna drop a bit more and be milder. Yeah, sorry, I'm checking Chandler really quick.
Where is it?
But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like you're like in a mountain place, and there are people. It's interesting because I've never seen it here. I've never seen it before, but here you have like kids with going out with the parents on a Sunday afternoon to the park, because the park is full of snow, so they bring their snowboard, or they bring their all their toys to just slide on the snow, and it's very fun. And also on Mont Royal, which is the mountain here of Montreal, there is a big hill, so you can walk up, and then you can go down and just lie down, and it's pretty fun. There are fun activities to do, so it's not that bad. At least for me, I like these activities. I like ice skating too, and it's all around the places. And then I know you can go outside Montreal. I haven't done it yet, but you can go outside Montreal and try the dog sliding, or the motoneige, which is like that thing.
Okay, yeah.
Sure. It's like a scooter, but you go on the snow with it. And there are lots of winter activities around. There are not just skiing and snowboarding, but are like more for families and friends and things to do together just outside the city. So it's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
When was the day when Giulia said to herself, I want to study animation, and why?
It's funny because when I started studying that in Italy, I was originally gonna study illustration and comic books because I really like to draw and make stories about my family and my friends as much as I do it right now in the end. When I went to that school in Italy, I showed my drawings, and most of them had a very light touch. And they told me that sometimes people with this type of style also switch to animation, and they asked me if I wanted to try animation or stick to comics. And I was, to be honest, like back then, I had no clue I could study animation because in Italy it was not something that common. And I am from a small town, so nobody ever told me, oh, you can go study animation. I had no clue. But because I was so obsessed with animation movies since I was a little kid, and I actually drew a lot from animation movies, I decided, oh, maybe I can try that. Hi. Maybe I can try that. So that's why I gave it a try. And I started to actually study animation in Italy. And then I was not too excited about it, but not because of the animation itself. It was mostly the course that was not that intensive as I would like it to be. But yeah, then I stick to it because I really like to design characters, to be honest. But I really like when they move, when they start doing their own thing and they become alive. It's cool. So that's why I stick to it, and you just feel like, I don't know, it's your character, but it's moving on its own in the end. It's your little creation, and you feel proud of it. Yeah. And this was mostly I felt a way more when I had to draw on paper and then shoot each drawing one after the other. When I drew on paper and I try to animate on paper, you don't really see what you're animating, what the movement is, because you can only flip the paper. So you just do it by eye in the end. Yes. And when I actually had to shoot the paper and see all the drawings together, I could see what I was doing and what the animation was. But in that moment, sometimes the animation would be totally crappy. But when actually other times it will work, you just feel like, oh my god, the character is moving by itself and it's doing this and that, and it's just like and because it's on paper, it just feels more yours because it's your drawing. So it feels like your little kid coming alive in a sense. You feel proud of it in the end.
Yeah, they are like creations with their own life. Do you think it is important for an animator to know how to act? Not to be an actor or an actress, but just to know how to perform?
Well, first of all, it's very common for animators to shoot video references because it's very hard to make up animation, especially when it's physical animation. Sometimes you might have an idea, but you don't really know how that part of the body moves or works when you're doing this or that. So animators and myself too, we usually take a video reference to understand what's going on in the body. But at the same time, when you take a video reference, you have to make a video that is nice. I mean, depends what you're acting, but if it's just a basic walk, okay. But if you are expressing a specific... Chandler, you're so noisy. Okay, if you're expressing a specific character or an emotion or a concept or like a personality, I think you cannot be too vague. You really need to understand who the character is to make it more believable. So you can act it and make it more natural and believable, and then with the reference you can make your animation itself more real. So it's not really you need to be an actor from Hollywood, but I think you need to understand a lot who you are animating, and this also applies to character design or other things. If you don't know who you are drawing, the drawing or the animation is very vague, and you don't really capture that essence in a sense. So if you can learn more about your character, then you know how it will react to this or that, what it would think if this happens. So when you act your reference, you are like that character. And you don't need to be like a major actor for Oscar actor, but you need to know who you are playing in a sense. Then if it's just like a movement, like, okay, taking a cap, I mean, there can be some nuances to taking a cap from here to there too, but especially if it's an acting shot or like a visual where you see the expression and the face and a lot of emotions, you want to know who you are expressing, who is this character, why is it there, what's his story. But yeah, I understand sometimes, especially if you're in a tight schedule in a movie, you have less time to do that, so you wanna try to be fast in terms of learning, but also like ask other people, ask the supervisor and other animator how you think the shot should be done. But yeah, when you take the video reference, you have to be very specific to follow that specific character and to express him or her very well.
Even for the character effects, it is so important to know every character and how they approach a situation, because we have to know, or we have to complete their personality with the movement of the cloth in the hair, also with the grooming and all these things that are the small details, but also they are a part of a huge little parts that complete that character. So yeah, it is very important to know about the character, the personality, their story, basically everything.
I agree. Yeah, because when you know what your character is, then it's much less complicated to pick some decisions along the way. Yeah. No, to get my first job in 3D was actually at Sony. So I'm pretty new to the industry. I didn't get that many studios experiences. Mm-hmm. But to get my first job, it actually took forever. And I was losing a lot of sanity at the point. It was mostly due because of some visa situation when I was in Vancouver. My first visa got rejected. Yes. My first visa got rejected, and I had to wait more for it to be reconfirmed. And even after that, it took a while to get the first actual job. My first actual job was for cleanup in 2D. So in Vancouver. So I got the 3D job at Sony as the first 3D job, but my first job was actually in DHX, and I was doing some cleanup in Flash. But it took a while, not because I don't think as a junior my reel was lacking. It's just because there are many factors that people need to understand. There is the visa and the immigration is a big thing, but also like many people are applying and many people are new in the industry, and there are also the experienced people around. So there is a lot going on, and you have to be lucky too. There is also the fact of timing. Sometimes you apply and they are not looking, but maybe when they start looking, you are not the first one in the list that they have, so you don't get contacted right away, and you're like panicking, what's going on? So I think I got all the possible unlucky things in the beginning because it took me more than a year to get a job. And I was really like, well, to be honest, I was still practicing on my own, but I was not practicing as much as before because I was losing it a bit and I was a bit down. But I think as long as you do other things on the side that are not animation related, you can still be happy in a sense. Not super happy, like, oh my god, I don't have a job. But yeah, just keep a schedule or just keep seeing friends was very seeing friends and doing things that I care about besides animation was very important. And for as far as the first job in 2D, I was there for a while, but after a while I really wanted to do animation and I really wanted to do 3D. So when they asked me if I wanted to renew my contract, I said no. And I decided to take Anim Squad instead. And I thought it was a stupid decision because, I was making money, but at the same time, I was not happy. So I was mostly bored because I was just cleaning up drawing in Flash. And I didn't want to do that anymore after a bunch of months. So I said I would take a break, and I took Anim Squad instead. And after I did that, I got my first job in Sony. So actually, it was not a bad decision.
It was a good decision.
It was a good decision, but you don't really know in the beginning, you just take a chance, you just take risks. Yeah. So it's always stressful a bit when you don't know.
Talking about stress, how is the life of an animator?
Sorry?
How is the life of an animator? How does it work for you, like to be an animator with your personal life and everything? How is it? Can you describe the life of an animator?
Okay. I think, to be honest, when you start a project in animation, usually it's pretty chill, but I think in every production, the beginning part of the project is very chill. You have to do research about the characters, and you don't have a huge amount of work to do. You just work normally 9 to 6, and you enjoy things. You're pretty relaxed. You have colleagues and everything. And what happens most of the times is that the production will be delayed, everything is delayed, and at the end of the production you have lots of stuff to do. So in my experience, it has happened every time. So let's say that balancing personal life is not as hard in the beginning as it is in the end of the production, because in the beginning you separate work and personal life pretty easily, but in the end you're very stressed. And to be honest, I can see like I'm improving a little bit compared from my jobs in Sony and in MPC, because in Sony and in MPC I would just freak out a lot and I would be very stressed in a sense. And I would really tell my friends, I would just tell my friends, oh, I'm stressed, I don't know what to do. I mean, it was very hard for me to balance things and balance life. I would just do the work, but then I would feel stressed even when I was going back home. So to me, this project has been still hard in the end, but I try to work on myself and improve how I approach stress, even when it comes up during the day of work. And even if something bothers me at work, I try to be more rational, or like take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize what's actually going on, because sometimes you just make a lot out of nothing, and you just make your anxiety maybe for some project or some shot makes you feel like this is a big deal. Oh my God, someone just talked to me in a way and I think this is gonna happen, but sometimes it's not real. It's just like you're worried. And so it's good to just breathe a bit and realize, oh, maybe I'm thinking something and it's not really what's going on. So I don't know. It's just working on myself and how to deal with stress has been helpful for the last production. I think I was still stressed, but it had less of an impact of my personal life and on the life that I had when I went back home. It's still an ongoing process, but I mean, things just take time. And I think everybody gets stressed at the end of the production. Everybody gets sick or yeah. So everybody has a different way of dealing with it. Some people are more like, they don't show it at all. I try to not show it, but sometimes it will show. But yeah, I think people think I don't show it because I'm always laughing a lot when I'm in the studio. But actually, like, if the moments I'm not laughing, I'm actually in my head panicking. So yeah, it just, yeah, you just show it in a different way, or you don't show it, but in the end you deal with it, and you learn from experience.
Yeah.
And from asking other people. I mean, I can ask friends and that more close friends how to deal with things. And to be honest, maybe it's not even the highest stress that people have that it was given to me, because I'm not a senior. So I'm not sure. Maybe when I'm a senior, I'll be dead. But I don't know. For now, I just take one thing at a time. Let's see. Yeah.
That's a good advice. Just to finish the podcast, is there any advice that you want to give to the ones that are starting in the industry, or the ones that want to study animation or study something related in the industry? Do you want to give them an advice?
One thing I noticed that we were doing a lot, me and other friends, was that we were copying a lot, which is fine to learn when you copy animation because you want to learn. But for any reason, you don't want to take another artist's style as your own. Ultimately, like, you want to copy to learn, but then you have to find your own, like, what you really like and what you want to express. So yeah, you have to find your thing, in a sense, because you don't want to stay in this field to copy. It's an artistic field, so you need a voice, or supposedly you have a voice or something you want to say. And even if it's animation, and in the end you are like in a studio and you have to make movie movies because someone is telling you to do this or that. I think it's good to know what you want and what your voice is instead of just copying. And also, I think for animation, it takes a lot of time. And in the beginning, it's very confusing. And yeah, just to find something that you really like and you want to really express and see how you work your own vision in it. And also, I wanted to say that animation, and especially, animation itself takes a lot of time to understand. And there are still things that I learn every day when I'm in the studio. So even to young people, it's normal that it takes time. So some concepts take a long to get absorbed by the brain. It's just very hard. So the more you work on it, I think the more you get the hang of it. You get used to it. But in the beginning, it's pretty, it can be very confusing sometimes, especially when you work with a graph editor in 3D. It's just, it can take some time. So not to be discouraged in a sense.
So, Giulia, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
I really enjoyed it too much. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Letty.
Well,
no worries. This was fun. Thank you. And hi, Meme.
Meme, say bye. Meme is now angry with me because
why?
He's angry. Just look at him. He's like, no, I don't want this to finish.
Oh, yeah.